Hello everyone, today I'm going to be doing a presentation of types and functions of storytelling. As you can see, the sources included here, learning.edx.org, and educators are also included here. There's actually one particular educator here, and she's Dr. Bestie R. Rhymes. So let's get started. Stories in classroom interaction. Why we tell stories. Stories have a powerful impact on classroom interaction and learning because when we're telling stories, students tend to be more drawn to the material in the class, maybe just out of curiosity. They help address emotional, immediate, and complex concerns. Story structure provides a shared framework for understanding difficult ideas. Storytelling makes personal experiences relatable in a social setting because stories provide a recognizable format for making complex personal experience relatable in a social setting. It helps build classroom community and supports individual development. So here's a great example of Vivian Pelly. So what she does actually is she uses storytelling as the foundation of her preschool curriculum, and students use stories to bring outside experiences and emotions into the class. Stories help bridge the gap between adult and child perspectives. So this is a very great example. Typical story starters. So we we actually catch the attention of the students by saying these things, and it's also a great way to claim the floor before saying what you want to say. And these statements can be used to make the topic more interesting. We can also use these to get the students to tell stories, and you know the things that we can say is to claim the floor is, let me tell you about what happened to me. It's gonna draw the attention of the audience, or you're not gonna believe this, but, and then you can proceed to say whatever you want to say. Or I'd like to share a story with you. And typical starters, these shouldn't be known answer questions because known answer questions have one particular answers, but the if you ask like general questions, it's gonna open up dialogues for longer periods of time. For example, tell us about your birthday party, you know, or how did you get that cut, or has anything like that ever happened to you? Stories and prompts. A question doesn't need to be designed for storytelling to produce a story. Students may reinterpret any question as a story prompt, and a great example for this is on the left, as you can see. So teacher says, "Do men wear a lot of hats now?" And Danny responds back to the teacher saying, like, you know, they can say yes or no, but instead of that, they say some don't. The trained people wear these big old things. And you know, Tiffany responds like this and pointing to the picture emphatically. So as you can see, it opened up a dialogue here, you know. It shouldn't be like, even though, he could have said yes or no, he just opened up a dialogue here. Objects that instigate storytelling. So objects actually can prompt storytelling: toys, clothing, and school supplies. So there's actually a pretty good quote regarding this, and I forgot her name, but the quote is here. Helicopters and kittens and superhero capes and Barbie dolls are storytelling aids and conversational tools. Without them, the range of what we can listen to and talk about is arbitrarily circumscribed by the adult point of view. Student stories. So, if teachers pay close attention to the stories students tell in class, they can start to understand when those stories are actually helpful. Even if they interrupt the lesson, some stories may seem like distractions at first, but they can be useful breaks that make the lesson better when the class comes back to it later. So, example for this might be like, what about this question or event made the story possible? We have to, ask ourselves these questions as a teacher. How is this story reshaping classroom questions and events? Through the story, structure. So structure actually can be like divided into three parts: problem, response, and consequence. So example for this might be Federico's fight story, and this was in the book. And the problem here is fighting with another neighborhood, and then response is he gathers friends to fight back, and the consequence is he gets caught and kicked out of high school. Why story form matters? It provides expectations for the listener, helps structure details, shapes the telling for engagement. As I said, it's if you start if when you get into the class and start a conversation by telling a story, it's going to draw the attention of the audience, and it's going to make some sort of outline of what you're going to say, because instead of you know saying whatever you want to say, maybe it's just going to sound a little bit more you know not exciting. But if you tell stories, it's going to be a little bit more exciting. It's not going to be dull. Narrative dimensions. According to Eleanor Oakes, and she's a linguistic anthropologist, and Lucy Capps, a clinical psychologist, stories vary, and it has five main dimensions. One is tellership. It's who tells a story and how many people tell a story at once. And the two is tellability, and this is how captivating and dramatic the story is. And three, embeddedness. This is how much it relates to another event in which it's told. And linearity, it's whether it proceeds strictly chronologically or varies. And moral stance, this is how the teller evaluates or places moral value on the events of the story. Cultural differences. So this is a little bit of an important one. Tracton, it's a largely white working class town, and Roadville, a black working class town. So there's a huge difference between these two places, these two cultures, let's say. In Roadville, a good story emphasizes factual accuracy. Residents value precise retelling of events, so a story is considered strong if it faithfully represents what actually happened. But in Tracton, on the other hand, storytelling is about talking junk, which means like exaggeration, which involves exaggeration, layering, and vivid comparisons. So a story is judged by how entertaining, dramatic, or imaginative it is, not strictly by whether every detail is literally true. So the key point here is a Tracton story might seem like a lie to someone from a Roadville, even though it's completely true, while a Roadville story might seem boring or incomplete to someone from Tracton. So this is a very, very interesting thing concerning cultural differences. Linearity and cultural patterns. So here there's a story, Sarah Michaels study, and she actually compares European American students, and they obviously say topic centered and linear stories, but African American students, they tell episodic and complex stories. So adult interpretation varies by cultural background as well. Co-authoring stories. So stories aren't told in isolation particularly. They are shaped by the audience. So silent audience reactions like nods or gaze or laughter. Spoken contributions are also like clarifying, adding details, or contesting facts. In classrooms, students manage a dual audience, peers plus teacher. So as a dual audience, the example here is Rene's birthday cake story. So this was in the book. Rene doesn't like having his face stuck in the cake, and Pierre's audience, Nancy and Roberto, they co-author by contrasting their feelings. I do like it, and laughing. Ren negotiates his emotions. He can explain why he dislikes it without being embarrassed. And teacher's audience, the teacher asks clarifying questions to understand the tradition. Rain explains the context to legitimize the story, and the outcome here is Rain successfully tailors the story for both audiences. Peers see him as relatable and authentic. beyond the story. Storytelling versus IRE sequences. I actually talked about IRE sequences like in the previous videos. So IRE, to remind you, it's initiation, response, evaluation, and this is like teacher student back and forth. The teacher says something and student says something back, but storytelling is different. It's invitational. It encourages multiple voices and perspectives. Again, it opens up dialogues and foster community and collaboration. Long-term consequences of stories stories it has two parts: modest, it is getting comfortable with each other's differences, and momentous, it's getting beyond institutional and societal labels. Thank you for listening to my presentation.